This is a quick tour of MedPoint. When you open the program, if you are a physician or a nurse, a provider or a nurse, the program will open to the clinical window. The clinical window is where you will be doing everything that you need to do pretty much all day long. It contains a miniature schedule, which is the easiest way to open up a patient's chart. You'll notice that the schedule is color-coded. The first two patients on my schedule, for example, are I can tell by the color that what their status is. Yellow for Erin Caffrey means that the patient has arrived. She has checked in, but is waiting triage. So she's still waiting for the nurse in the waiting room. Green for my next patient means that the patient has arrived and triage is completed. So if I'm a provider, I know that this patient is now waiting for me. Green is the color that says the ball is in my court if I'm a provider. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to click on David's name on the schedule, and that opens up his chart. I get a quick view of his problems, his medications, allergies, and reactions, and general notes. This is all part of the overview page. Over on the right side, I can also see his preventive care profile. These are the things that I'm following for this patient based on his problems, medications, allergies and reactions, his age, sex, smoking status, insurance, basically all of the clinical data points that determine what preventive care items are appropriate for me to follow up on him. The ones being in red are ones that are overdue that I want to pay particular attention to. Before I actually get in to this patient's chart, I want to point out that there are two ways to select a patient. So the first is a visit-related chart open. So that's by clicking on the patient's name on the chart, which we already did. And the second is if I'm opening the chart that's for a non-visit related purpose. So if I get a phone call or if I'm reviewing a lab result or something like that, patient is not on my schedule, he's not in the office today, but I want to look at his chart anyways. If it's visit related, I'm going to click on the patient's name on the schedule like I did. If it's not visit related, I'm going to click the patient lookup window there, and that opens up a lookup window, and I can put in a couple letters of the patient's last name and comma first initial. That narrows down my selection quite a bit. I can use my arrow keys to highlight the patient I want, press enter, and that opens up the patient's chart. Now going back to my visit, so I again click on David's name on the chart. Let's take a quick review or quick tour of what we're looking at. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is someone's going to want to enter the intake information, generally done by a nurse. They can do that simply by clicking on the intake button here that opens up the intake window. Here, the reason for the visit was already entered, as well as the pertinent vital signs. And they show up here in the control window. Over here on the left side, we have our inbox, and notice that inbox says 37 and it shows in red. Red, again, is the color that get my attention. So if I click on inbox, I can see that I have some urgent phone calls that are showing in red there. The inbox is divided up into 4 tabs. I've got my basic phone messages, a refill requests, any documents that are pending my signature, as well as any reports that have come in, lab results, imaging reports, and consults, anything like that that I would need to see. So once they come into the system, they appear right there for me, and I can simply click on the document, and that opens up the document as well as the patient's chart at the same time. The table of contents is here, that's TOC, and that is going to show me all of the documents in this patient's chart. It also has some subtabs here. These subtabs are configurable, but the program comes installed with what we believe are the most common subtabs that you'd want to see in your inbox. And then finally, there's a visit tab, and this is going to give me a list of all of the problems that I've selected for this patient's visit. So if I go back to my overview page, I can see that he is here for a follow-up for diabetes. I've already clicked the select button to select diabetes, and that's why it shows there in bold. If I'm going to address diabetes, I'm probably also going to address other cardiac issues. So I'll click on hypertension. That opens up an HPI window for me to enter the history to document the HPI, which you can do using the radio buttons, the text fields, drop-down boxes, or you can just simply type or dictate into the note field. I will skip that. It also opens up AutoVisit. AutoVisit is a window that brings together in one window everything that you typically do to address this family of problems. I will go ahead and close that. So now I've got two problems selected, and again, if I want to select another one, I can go ahead and click on Select for Hyperlipidemia. That opens up my next problem, and I could document the histories there as well. That opens up AutoVisit for hyperlipidemia, and there I could address the issues that I need to address. So AutoVisit can be opened up at any time by clicking on the button here. This is AutoVisit. So this will be AutoVisit for diabetes. If I click on that, I can see that. I can open up diabetes or AutoVisit for hypertension, and I can open up AutoVisit for hyperlipidemia. So AutoVisit is a self-learning tool, so it will learn as you go as to what are the things that you typically do, procedures, imaging orders, lab orders, things like that, that you are doing on a regular basis to address those problems. If I go back to my overview page, one of the buttons here is today's note, and that's going to bring me to today's note, and it's generating the note as we go. One of the things you want to pay attention to is, one of the things you want to understand is that this system uses intelligent text generation to generate your note. So you really don't want to type here. This is compiling the note from the information that it has as you go. At the top of this note window, I've got the common buttons that will open up the task that I do. And so let's address some of the critical ones. So first of all, let's talk about selecting a diagnosis. So select a problem. You can select a chronic problem. That's a problem that is already on the patient's problem list, which we already did. You can select an acute problem, and you can also select a new problem. So to select a chronic problem, these are problems that are already on the problem list. I'm just simply going to click the select button next to the problem that I want to select. To select an acute problem, I am going to click on the Diagnosis Encounter button. That will open up my encounter form. This is a user-defined and configurable form that generally has a top 200 or so ICD-10 codes that you address on an acute basis. It's multiple pages generally, and anything that's not on here, you can use a select button to do a lookup and to find it. The third way to select a problem is by clicking on the New Diagnosis button, and if I did that, I can begin to type a description of the problem I'm looking for, and then that opens up 10 guide, which lets me be as specific as necessary. And by clicking select here, it's going to do two things. It adds it to my visit, but it also at the same time adds it to my problem list. And so it will give a start date of today. Going back to today's note, everything that I need to do to document today's visit, whether it's documenting my physical exam, my history, my review of systems, or any orders that I need to make, and eventually closing the visit and signing the note are available through buttons along the top row there. A few other things that you may want to have access to on the patient's chart are the histories. So this is where any past medical history or surgical history are viewed and accessible. Family history as well as social history, and they can be updated simply by clicking the update button. I go to family history, click the update button, then it opens up a form, and I can complete the information, click save, and that generates my family history document. Finally, over on my schedule tab, I have the ability to select a different day of the calendar. So I could select a different provider if I wanted to, or I could go to yesterday or to tomorrow's schedule to view that. And add appointment, this is where if I haven't begun to fully use the program yet and I want to add a single patient, I can look that patient up here by putting in a couple letters of the last name, comma, first initial, select the patient, put in the time, and then click save. Or I could click the new patient button. If I click on the new patient button, That's telling the system that I want to add an appointment for a patient I don't already have in the system, and then it will allow me to enter that patient's information and put this patient on the schedule. If I'm importing a patient from my previous EMR, I can click on the Import CCD button, and it will pull in all that information, all the demographic information as well as the clinical information, and then it will continue allowing me to add this patient to my schedule for today.